Okay, today's one of those days where I just did the whole beverage thing wacky again. We kind of slept in, woke up a little late, didn't have my coffee till later. And I've been on a budgeting kick, so I've been trying to make coffees at home, which I usually try to do that anyway, but we did have somewhere to be, and we got a coffee on the way. So I had a brown sugar oat milk shake and espresso drink. If you know, you know, it's like such a good drink. That's been my go-to order this whole spring, summer. And then we saw my friend and went to a pool day with her to give ourselves a little summer fun. We have not spent that much time at a pool this summer. I think that was like my third time swimming. So we did the pool day, and then we had some high noons while we were there. And then we went out to dinner afterwards at Chick-fil-A, and I had a chocolate milkshake. And so this is the first time, it's 8:00. This is the first time I'm drinking water all day. So I don't recommend that, but it's what happened. It's what happened. I think that habit started, it was not good, but during COVID, when we lived with Ian's parents, I would wake up in a depression and then start with like black coffee, sip on it until like noon. And then, whoa, there was a huge bug. And then maybe do like, honestly, probably nothing at lunchtime. And then at like 3 or 4 o'clock, Ian would be like, do you want a Rheingeist Bubbles, which is my favorite Rheingeist thing to get. Excuse me. I'm like full of bubbles myself today, obviously. But Rheingeist is like a Cincinnati, Ohio brand, and they do beer and ales and whatever. But the Bubbles is like a combo of an ale and kind of like a cider. So I love the Rheingeist Bubbles. So bad habit, because I would just go from caffeine to alcohol for like 8 months of COVID. Not great. Not a good look. But anyway, we're not here to talk about drinks. We're here to talk about something rather important today. I don't know who else feels this way, but the world, I mean, I feel like every podcast I'm starting it this way. Like, the world is so heavy right now. It's really hard to feel like you can just make it through a day and have a general sense of optimism. It's probably even harder if you don't have like a faith or a set of beliefs that really keeps you grounded. But even as someone who does have that faith, whew, man, every single day it's feeling like, is this the end of the world? Like, let me check my apocalypse calendar. Like, remember in 2012, throwback to 2012, when everyone thought the world was going to end in like December. And I remember like being at like the high school winter dance, like before Christmas break. And we were like, we're gonna party like it's 2012. Like, the world was ending, and we were all like, just like, okay, I guess when it hits New Year's, we're not gonna be here anymore. Bye. We were like kind of half serious about it. Anyway, every day recently, it feels like the world's about to end. But I don't know. I genuinely don't know. I'd love to tell you that this is an isolated incident and the world is not ending just now and Jesus is not returning at this moment. However, I don't know. Like, I do not know. And that is freaking me out. But there's also been so many terrible things throughout history where I'm sure throughout the centuries, people have gone, oh my gosh, this is it. It's the end of the world. Like, first time there was an earthquake, I'm sure they thought it was the end of the world. First time, well, I was going to say when the dinosaurs were extinct, sure they thought it was, yeah. The cavemen were like, bro, that's it. Like, world is ending. And for some of those dinosaurs, the world did end. But anyway, I digress. We're going to talk a little bit about feelings and maybe jump into a little bit of scripture and maybe some practicals. Definitely some practicals. I don't want to just whine without giving you something to dine on. Okay. Yeah, let's do it. So maybe I need to clarify if you're confused and you listened to that intro and you were like, wait, India, what's happening in the world? Because I don't hear anything bad. Maybe you're like, literally like, what's wrong? Like, things are going really well. Bruh, obviously, I kind of envy you. I kind of envy that. Maybe this episode isn't for you. Maybe it is, though. And maybe this will provide some guidelines or some thoughts or provoke something interesting in your brain. But honestly, if you are not expelling significant amounts of brain space a day on just the global crises, the natural disasters, the weight of the world and technology and AI and the wars going on, our place in them or not in them, and the sinful things going on in the world, then like, I don't know, maybe you don't need this episode. However, I talk a lot on this show about how I want to be informed about what's going on in the world, but also not set into a chronic depression over the sinful things going on. And I'm not the pro at that. Like, I'm not going to sit here and act like I've got all my little ducks in a row when it comes to managing information while not letting it transform me into something negative and cynical and pointed. However, I also just think as a Christian, like, and I can only speak to my own personal beliefs, like I don't know how everyone else believes, but like for me as a Christian, I don't believe I have the luxury of ignoring injustice. That's not the vibe that I get when I see Christ in the scriptures' attitude towards the things of this world that are wrong. I see not even in like negative or, I'm just going to stay out of this one perspective, but an otherworldly, upside down cultural reset perspective of love your enemy. If someone slaps you on the cheek, turn and let them slap the other. Feed the poor and the hungry and take care of the widow and the orphan and house the oppressed and care for the oppressed. And those are like really big themes that are not just mere analogies or suggestions in scriptures, but rather literal one-for-one guidelines, I think, that are still applicable to this day and also model the character of Christ. But people love to explain that away, don't they? So anyway, while I don't think Christians have the luxury of just turning a blind eye toward injustice, I do think we also must, especially in 2025, we must prioritize our mental health and only do what is in our control. Because every person truly has their own human limitations. And it gets really complicated and hard to kind of grapple with your own human limitations when you see such gargantuan issues. I think for one, the sustainability factor is an ongoing, affects everyone across the globe issue. And for me, I don't do sustainability. I do not do sustainability perfectly. I will never do sustainability perfectly. However, part of that is because I just live in a world where I simply can't. Like, genuinely, no one in today's day and age, I think, who's like trying to have, let's say, just a normal job. Like, you have to drive a car. That's going to contribute to carbon emissions. I travel for work. Sometimes I'll be flying on a plane that could, there's no way I could just be like, boop, like, I'm not going to take a car. I'm not going to take a plane. There's things you can do, little things that are in our control. Like, I could choose to have a little less red meat in my diet. I could choose to turn off the lights and the water. I could choose to only thrift or primarily thrift. I could choose all kinds of little things. I could choose the better shipping option on clothes. I could take the route with less traffic stops, like whatever. But at the end of the day, like, we alone cannot fix the climate crisis. I cannot fix the climate crisis by myself. So we have our limitations. We have our tiny bits that we do have control over. And so it's really important, I think, to kind of just prioritize your mental health by acknowledging, like, I can only do my little teeny tiny part, and also advocate for others to do their little teeny tiny part. So it's a little crazy. So I want to kind of start off by saying that I don't want this episode to come off as an excuse for inaction against some of the very, very horrific things going on in this world. I really fear that some of you might listen to this and go, okay, cool, well, I'll just keep doing absolutely nothing. And, it is what it is. well, glad I'm not there. Glad I'm not in those people's shoes. I hope that's not what happens. I really hope. I can obviously say that again from my place of privilege. Like, I'm holding the mic. This is my camera set up in my backyard. But I also want to stand by my own words with that, and also not just upload this and let it be another episode out on the interweb space and then go about my life. Like, I want these words to change me and you today, because they feel a little inspired tonight from the Holy Spirit, and I wanted to share all this. But anyway, so you can only do so much, but you can and should take action in the big and small ways whenever possible. I think that's kind of what I want to be, like, the overarching message of this podcast. That's what I've had my guests come on here and in their spaces and respective fields kind of share. Like, you can only do so much, so do what you can and do it with your whole chest. Okay. But if you're like, India, I've been reading and praying and donating and protesting and making contributions, and I'm really, really struggling on just enjoying the limited life that I have. Maybe you're like, I'm just a girl in my 20s. Like, I am just trying to live my best life here. Like, I get you, sister, me too. Maybe you're like, oh, I'm in my 50s and I don't know how much time I have left. Or maybe you're in your 80s and you're listening to this. I don't think I have any 80-year-old listeners, but if you are, maybe you're like, dang, I've got like probably a few good years left. How do I use them to the best of my ability? These are big questions. Okay. I'm not the person to answer them fully, but I'm glad you're here and listening to me. That's like really cool and very humbling. I was making sure my mic is on. It's blinking green, but it's also solid red. Does red mean it's stopped recording or it's recording? I don't know. Okay. Anyway, this is for you. This is for you. No matter who you are, this podcast is for you. So I want to also just kind of pop back in a little bit of my background. You guys know me. I identify as a Christian woman. And even though that's still kind of like I don't know, like somewhat of a stigma thing to say, or like it's a loaded label, I guess, to say. And I'm really tempted to follow that up by not that kind of Christian, because there are so many subgenres of Christianity and so many bad counterfeits of Christianity that I really, sometimes kind of shudder at even using the word myself. But I do identify as a Christian as far as I believe in Jesus, and I believe he was a real person and a real teacher, and I abide by his teachings and scripture, and I believe in the Trinity, and that the Bible holds a lot of beautiful truths and stories and documents and aligns with history and science to kind of present this beautiful overarching picture of Jesus, who came and died for us and invites us into everlasting life with him. That's the best way I can put it. But yeah, we could dive into a whole nother like faith episode on like the counterfeit Christianities. Oh, that'd be juicy. But anyway, so that's the kind of lens I'm going to be talking through today. I, as a Christian, have a theory that is deeply rooted in the Bible on what's happening right now. As far as like us today in 2025 being so overwhelmed and hit with so much information that I literally sometimes feel like I don't know what to do. I have been shaken to the point of inaction. I've been bamboozled and overwhelmed with the weight of the world that it literally drains the life out of me and makes me question every single thing I'm doing. What is the purpose of doing wedding photography when 60,000 kids are dying in Gaza of starvation at this very moment? What is the purpose of walking into a luxury space doing, glitzy wedding photos with thousands of dollars of florals in beautiful venues and wearing cute, albeit thrifted designer clothes to these events to try to fit in with a luxury wedding network when there's earthquakes and planes are falling out of the sky and fires are taking over beautiful areas and floods are taking lives in Texas? Like, what is the purpose? What is the purpose? I deep down like know my overarching purpose is to make beautiful things, to continue making. And I know that my work has worth and value, regardless of what happens in the world. However, you might resonate with that. And I hope you do. Like, whatever you do right now for your work or for your hobby or your side hustle or just the thing you spend the majority of your time doing, I'm sure it's very easy to kind of just look around and be like, what is actually the good of this work when the world looks like this, or when the trajectory is X? You know, it gets a little spooky. So it can be easy to be in that position, but I want to kind of give my like theory or just kind of my 2 cents on why I think we're in this position as it is. So I call it kind of having a God's eye view, right? When we can see so much of what's going on in the world all the time, all of our friends, all of our family, all the global news networks, we are kind of becoming like in the position, not the power, but in the position of God or an all-knowing being or something, right? Like we are starting to take on that identity of saying, well, I know the truth because I saw this news outlet post it. I know what's really happening over there because this person shared it on their Instagram and now I'm enlightened and you're probably not. And then you watch someone else's post and another, and you read this article and then you watch that YouTuber and then you read that headline and you're starting to absorb everything going on in the world, not just your community, not just your neighborhood, not just the stuff that's like quote unquote relevant to you, but you're starting to absorb everything. I think that's dangerous and it's actually biblical. So again, in my Christian context, we read from the Bible. Oh no, my tab went away. Here we go. We read from the Bible. Okay, you probably heard of it. It's a book. It was canonized. I don't know when it was canonized. I'll have to look it up later. But it was a bunch of documents. I don't want to tell you the wrong thing. Oh, I want to say these were like all scrolls in a certain mountain. Anyway, at some point it became officially the Bible, and the church, the larger church, was like, these are the doctrines that we will bound together. And then the printing press was formed, and then the book sales have just exploded since then. But it's a pretty good book. I still got questions. I haven't read through the whole thing, probably. I don't think I have. And if I have, I definitely did not understand all of it. But it is the text in which my faith is kind of founded off of. So, the fall, Genesis 3. I'm going to read this little excerpt. Again, if you're not religious, this is like gibberish to you, you don't have to continue listening to this episode, but let me just walk with me down this road for a minute. I'm just curious to see your thoughts as well. This is from Genesis 3. So Genesis is the first book in the Bible, so it kind of kicks off the whole thing. Here's the 3rd chapter. It says, "Now the serpent was more crafty than any of the wild animals the Lord God had made. He said to the woman," this is Adam and Eve, they're in the Garden of Eden. I should have prefaced with all this. "Did God really say you must not eat from the tree in the garden?" The woman said to the serpent, "We may eat fruit from the trees in the garden, but God did say, you must not eat the fruit from the tree that is in the middle of the garden, and you must not touch it or you will die." And the serpent says, "You will not certainly die." The serpent said to the woman, "For God knows that when you eat from it, your eyes will be opened and you will be like God, knowing good and evil." Verse 6, "When the woman saw that the fruit of the tree was good for food and pleasing to the eye and also desirable for gaining wisdom, she took some and ate it. She also gave some to her husband who was with her, and he ate it. Then they realized that Then the eyes of both of them were opened and they realized they were naked. So they sewed fig leaves together and made coverings for themselves." And then it kind of goes on. And then God's like, whoa, did you guys just eat that? And then they have some curses coming for them because literally he said not to, and they did it anyway. So that in our faith is a big deal. That's known as like the first sin. Adam takes a bite from the apple. But what I wanted to talk to you today about is that tricky little line in verse 5. When the serpent says, "For God knows that when you eat from it, your eyes will be opened and you will be like God, knowing good and evil." Are you tracking with me? Are you tracking with me today? Can I get an amen, somebody? No, I'm not going to pretend to be a pastor. I am not a sermon graduate. I did not study the texts. I did not have any religion courses in my art degree from college. But I do care for scripture. And I just felt like that verse has been really like prevalent in our cultural time right now. It's tying into what I'm trying to, let me just get on with it. Okay. I find it interesting that the serpent said that the tree of knowledge was of good and evil, because it's really easy to be like, well, wait a second. How could absorbing good wisdom and knowledge be bad? How could absorbing the good of this world? I can understand, like, oh, you don't want to know the evil in this world. There's a lot going on. Like, don't take a bite, because then you're going to know about all the evil, and that's going to just like really mess you up. But why does it say good? I don't have the biggest answer in the world. I didn't dive into the Greek translations of this, but I just think it's interesting, because when we scroll on Instagram and you find out that your friend is pregnant, and you like maybe you struggle with infertility, it's good news for them, but it probably messes you up on the inside just a little. Or if you struggle, like you're not going on a vacation, you're really like in your budgeting era, and you see me or someone post their vacation pictures, then you get hit with greed, envy, jealousy, maybe a little anger, because gosh dang, you've been saving up and working so hard, and how come you don't get to go on vacation? Do you see what I'm saying? The good things good news can still be bad if it falls on the eyes and heart of someone who is not ready to receive it as good news. Evil, we all can understand that one. Like, we can understand when we see and hear too much evil, the God's eye perspective of evil going on in the world, this giant ongoing 21-month war Israel and Gaza are going through, this 3-year war of Ukraine and Russia, the ongoing like starvation in third world countries. I think like Sudan's been one of those countries for forever. The USAID funds getting cut. Oh my gosh, don't even get me started on like that whole situation and how many lives, innocent lives, are going to be lost due to the lack of funds that we as US taxpayers were already funding, that accounts for less than 1% of our entire national debt budget. But sure, let's just slash it. The alligator Alcatraz situations going on with immigrants and migrants coming in through the Texas and Mexico and Florida borders. It's not good. It's not good stuff. So I can understand, again, like why it's dangerous to know too much of the evil. But I think just making recognition with our own humanity. Hi, Zuzu. Hi, baby. Our neighbor's dog is here. Hi, honey. Yes. You want to be on my podcast? Hi, baby girl. Yeah. But yeah, I just think it's interesting to kind of acknowledge the good and the evil in our world, in our lives, and kind of how that can manifest itself, and how that was really early on an issue, right? Like, it was from the start, like a warning, the very first sin, the very first like lesson from God, kind of saying, hey guys, like, you do not want this level of knowledge. It's not going to be good for you. I know it's not going to be good for you because I'm God, and my heart is probably breaking. Well, you get what I'm saying. I'm not saying that, but he's probably sitting there saying like, this is so much, and it hurts my heart that I would never want my children, my image bearers, to try to understand all of this and take all of this on. And I just think when we try to step into a God's eye view and live in his perspective fully in that way of like, let me know everything God knows, we're bringing it back to that cardinal sin. And I think that can be a lot more damaging than anyone really wants to admit. So if you want to keep going in Genesis, I think it's a great book. Obviously, it starts the whole Bible, but it does lay these really interesting foundations for like the dawn of humanity. And very early on, right away, we were very tempted and pretty quick to just say, no, God doesn't know best. Like, I know best. And let me actually try to be like him in the name of my own self-satisfaction. And that's just something I want to encourage everyone to like sit with, because I think that manifests still to this day in so many ways. And it's easy. Like you'll go to church, and in youth group, they would always start naming sins. They'd be like, maybe you struggle with greed. Maybe you struggle with gossip. For the girls, it was always gossip. That's always when they list for the girls, like girls, jealousy, gossip, anger. For the boys, maybe you struggle with pornography or something. But it's very rare that I think we'll mention, like, maybe you struggle with trying to know so much good, evil, knowledge, information, that you're trying to take the place of God in the world. And that's just simply not the weight that you were ever intended to bear. I don't know. Okay, I need to move things along because the mosquitoes are coming for me. But I guess what I'm saying is, with this idea, bring it up to speed with the world we live in, where every single day, again, you have your Apple News alerts, you get an email with the news on it, you open Instagram to kind of have a little escapism, right? Like check in on your friends, post something fun, and then boom, there's a headline. There's something questionable that the New York Times posted. There's something that's probably skewed in some direction from Tangled News or the Wall Street Journal or the Atlantic, and you're just overwhelmed. I've said this before on the show, the 24/7 hour news cycle is truly eating at us, whether we admit it or not. I mean, for me personally, like, it has personally affected friendships. I mean, like, some of my friendships are no longer close friends of mine because of this 24/7 news cycle. It's hindered family relationships big time in our family. And it's not merely the information, of course, but like it's what loved ones and ourselves, like it's what we choose to do with it. Yeah. So it can just get tricky. I was trying to like read my notes there for a second. I had a word in there that's like auto-corrected to something else. But I do think like ever since COVID, like ever since late 2019, when we really got like stuck at home, I guess it was early 2020. Ever since then, the last 5.5 years, when we were told to stay home and glued to our phones, I think it's just only been worse. And maybe I'm, an odd person. Like, I might not be the right person to kind of fully reflect on this, because I do think like I worked for myself and jumped into that full time during that time. I didn't return to an office. I didn't go back to an office culture. I stay on screens literally all day, every day. So maybe I'm the wrong person to say this, but I do think that that's when the information and misinformation complex got bigger and bigger and bigger. That's really when it kind of mattered a lot, at least to me, how people perceive news, what outlets they were going to, whether there was a fake news going on or whatever. Like the people who gravitated towards wisdom and science and institutional knowledge, I feel like, yeah, that like affected one thing. And the people who kind of went on the conspiracy route down the rabbit hole, like we can't trust anyone, that affects other things. So I think that it was just kind of an interesting shift. And it definitely did affect things in my life and maybe your life too. But we need to move on to some practicals, right? Because it is unrealistic to say, okay, how do we solve the me being like God problem? It is unrealistic to say, okay, we'll just don't have a smartphone anymore. That is just wholly unrealistic. And I'm really tired of people just being like, we'll just get a dumb phone. And I'm like, okay, I could not run my business. I would not have clients. I would not, like, it would bring me down to like, I would be operating at 8% of the clientele if I had a dumb phone and just ran my business without Instagram, without social media. That's not possible. And for most people, it's not possible. Like, okay, you could get a dumb phone, but then like truly you wouldn't have a GPS anymore. you'd have to go back to the old Garmin thing. Like, it's just not realistic in so many ways to say, just get a dumb phone. It's also not realistic to say, get an extra phone. Some people, I think a couple of celebrities have talked about having like a bad phone or a dumb phone, and then the smartphone. One is for, I have to post something, and then it goes back in the drawer. And the other is your like one you actually call your friends and family on, and your personal phone. Who has the money for that? Honestly, like, unless you're trading something in and you keep your old one, like, it's just not another realistic choice. It's also unwise to say you should never be informed, I think. And again, I don't want to, finish this episode without saying that. I think we should be informed. I think especially Christians should know what's going on and do what they can. One example that comes to mind often is the civil rights movement. It was one of the biggest social justice movements, and it was primarily spearheaded by Christians. And I think so often we just quickly go on and say, well, I can't do anything, or, well, it's someone else's problem. And it's like, no, like, when you know something is wrong, no, you're not supposed to fix it every single way. And no, you don't have to be performative with it. And maybe protesting is or isn't the answer. I don't know. But in that case, like, without the church's participation, where would civil rights be? Where would the Black communities be? Like, it took the church and strong Black faith leaders to step up and actually say something and do something to make change happen in that case. And the entire country, like America, is so much better for it. And finally, it's poor stewardship to say that you have to have a response and a conviction on every single topic at the ready at all times, because that just will truly bog you down. Like, I personally struggle with this one. I constantly in my brain, I am going through a million what if scenarios. What if I get cornered and someone asks me on my stance on abortion and pro-life? What if I am suddenly up for Miss USA and someone's like, okay, what do you think about gun legislation? What if I'm, stopped at the supermarket and they're like, what do you think about surrogate pregnant mothers? Like, I have these anxious thoughts that spiral into these weird what if scenarios. And I will literally spend my free time, especially if I'm like driving in a car with no audio, like nothing to listen to. I will spend my free time trying to think up an answer that is democratic and suitable for the masses, but also somehow nuanced and true to my view. And that is exhausting. Did I say democratic? I think I meant diplomatic. I don't know what I meant. See, I don't even know the right words. Anyway, we got to get this thing rolling. So here are my ways. Here are my little tidbits for you today to try to get off your phone and just admit to yourself that you're not God. Enjoy your life again in the small ways you can, and kind of take back some agency in this ever-present digital landscape. Number one, obviously, I would be an idiot if I didn't say this. Get off your social media as much as you can. Everything I just said earlier about not being able to run a business without it is true. However, I can still run my business using social media, but just with certain limitations. It's just true. I really can. I can put 45 minutes on social media a day. I don't do that well, but I can even spend less than that, honestly. If I really wanted to, I could spend 15 minutes or less on social media and I would still be fine with my business. But I think that will really suck our souls out. And it really pains me to think about what Instagram's going to look like in 10 years or 20 years, and what kind of digital world our kids and our grandkids will grow up in. So I just think the more we can start to break those serotonin bonds that notifications have over us, the better. Things to use for that. The Brick is a thing I have. It's just called Brick. It's a little gray plastic box. It has some kind of sensor in it, and you can tap your phone on it. It'll lock you out of certain apps, and you have to physically tap your phone on it again to unlock you out of those. Wait. Yeah, you get it. To get you back in. Opal is another thing. It's an app. I have not tried it. I think it's $40 or $50 a year. The Brick was a $50 one time, and it's a physical thing. And so I think that worked a little better for me. But I've also heard of other things. You can, I guess, on the iPhone set a passcode that only like someone else could know the numbers to. And so when it locks you out, you literally have to go find them and have them unlock and get you back in. And I think that's handy, but maybe a little unrealistic, but maybe I'll get to that place where I'm just like strict enough about it. So I just get off of it. On that same note, number 2 is limit communication. If you're someone like me who uses your phone for work, it can feel like you have to have it by your side at all times, ready to go, just in case. And I haven't actually done this one yet, but hearing myself talk about it, I think I'm going to. You can set up a separate phone number. I think it's through Google, like a Gmail work number or something like that, a Google number. And that way you could send that number to your clients and customers for your work. And that's the only way they can get a hold of you. So then you have to actually sign in to that number. I think it's like an app, and check your voicemail and check your text there, instead of feeling like they have your personal number and they can get a hold of you or text you any hour of the day. I think that's helpful because right now I have no notifications on my phone. Like everything is turned off. So I don't see emails come in. I don't see Instagram notifications. And while that is helpful, I think it's helped my screen time and maybe my productivity a tad, but I still find myself like swiping up and getting on those apps to check all those things. However, I don't see them pop in on my home screen or light up my phone by my bedside all night long, which does help a lot. And I think nothing throws me off more than when I'm just like done for the day, chilling, watching a movie, or trying to have a little social media break or hiatus, or just doing something with my friends or eating dinner with my husband. And I get a text from a client at like 10 p.m. And I'm like, is this urgent? Do I need to respond? And it's like, oh, I can wait till later. And then later the next day I forget to do it because it's buried now in the other texts that are coming in from our small group and friends and family. And then they're like double texting and they're like, did you get that? And I'm like, what? Like, so I think separating it out as much as you can is helpful. Next tip, eat meals with friends. Eat meals with friends if you can. Discussing what's happening in the world in a safe environment where you know that you're loved and cared for. And even if you say the wrong thing or process your feelings, you are in an environment that is ready to sharpen you and work with you through that processing. I think that's huge. I made the mistake in COVID of kind of processing through something with someone who wasn't really a friend. And I remember them kind of being like, why would you say that? Like, I can't believe you just said that. Would you say that in front of this person? And I was like, whoa, like I was processing out one possible like thought. And I just had a question about something. And now I feel like attacked. Like I didn't come with everything ready to go. And that was hard because it was just like, okay, like, I guess I'm not allowed to like come and chat with you until I'm like totally put together and I've got all my ducks in a row and all my thoughts in one place. And online, that's how it can feel, low key as it should. Like we should not be going online and just like spewing our half-baked thoughts and wonderings and musings about things. But it can also, like, if you do that online, you're going to get in these internet battles and thumb keyboard warrior wars where you're just spitting at each other back and forth and you stop seeing each other as humans. But if you pause, have dinner, invite a friend, and you start talking about headlines and what's going on in the world, even if you disagree, I would rather disagree in person than draw a misaligned, misunderstood conclusion about who this person is and what they believe on the internet. Because you're not going to be able to have that back and forth, that face to face, and really like hear their tone of voice and understand where they're coming from on the internet. You're just not. Texting through big life issues, have not done that in a long time. It gets you into hot water. I would just like rather have those conversations in an environment that's in real life. I think that's key. Okay, the next tidbit, ground yourself in something higher than yourself. For me, that's faith. I genuinely, and I say this with all sincerity, there are so many amazing atheists, non-believers, different religious sectors of clients and people and friends in my life. I just don't know, like I wouldn't be functioning, I think, right now if I had no belief system, if I had no faith and no kind of moral compass and no ability or lens that's rooted in Christ's justice and love and religion that's full of relationship and peace and hope. if I was just like a lonely goat right now, I would be really confused, because it is really hard when you're putting your faith in all of humanity only in what we see, only in how good of a president we have. Or I should say, only if the president aligns with most of the social issues that you think are important. It's really hard to kind of walk through, how much battery do I have? 13%. It's really hard to walk through life holding your breath, going like, the only things that matter to me are if I can afford my house, and who the president is, and, you know, which social issues are in the hot seat or not. Like, those are really important things. But they are fickle, and they are very dependent on others. And we really don't have that much control over others, right? Like, we can only do what we can do, but your joy cannot be dependent on who is president. Your life and how big you dream cannot be dependent on the opportunities that have been placed in your lap. Like, there are so many things that we have to go out with courage and wisdom and conviction and say, like, I am not going to let these external things limit the one life that I have. And it can be really hard and really challenging. Like, the world is really freaking scary right now. Not a good place. And it kind of pains me to see some of my friends thinking that it's good and it's getting better because of those same things that make me nervous and terrified. That's not great. But I do think it's important to kind of have your own sense of morality, faith. I would say Christianity is a great faith. I mean, I'd be dumb to not say that, because then it means I don't believe it very much, I guess. But I would just invite anyone who's like curious about that to step into it a little more, because truly, like, this world and this sinful, messed up humanness is so selfish and broken that, like, yes, there's so much good in the world, but that cannot be where our hope comes from. Does that make sense? Okay. I spent too long on that point. Ground yourself in something higher. Oh, yeah, I was going to tell you a story. I don't have enough time or battery life. Another little tidbit. I think I'm 1.5. Make a little mantra for yourself, or a little breathing exercise, or a little prayer. Maybe something simple like breathing in and saying, I am not in control of this world. And then exhaling and saying, I can only control my own choices. Or maybe breathing in and saying, like, today is a gift. I will choose the next right thing. Whatever it is, I don't do this very often, but I should. But whatever it is, like, setting that little phrase or intention and just reminding yourself, like, I am one person. The world is not my problem to solve. Like, I can only do so much. And just reminding yourself every day, because I think otherwise we will actually go clinically insane if we don't remind ourselves of that. Touch some serious grass. That's my next point. You can also live in two places at once. You can exercise the privileges that you have while also caring about the deep, painful things going on in the world. Very quick story. 2 weeks ago? Yeah, I think it was 2 weeks ago. Last week? I don't remember. Time is irrelevant right now. We went camping with Ian's extended family in Mohican, and it's a state park in Amish country area of Ohio. And it's something his family has done for like 60 plus years. It's an ongoing tradition. And we weren't there for very many days, but it was so beautiful because we got to see all this extended family who take off work, come in from Indiana and Cleveland and Akron and Kentucky and wherever else. And they all come together and we make food every night, and you can kayak on the river. And we spent an afternoon kayaking with some cousins. We jumped in the pool. We had some smoked barbecue. We play volleyball. We get ice cream. I rode my bike one night around, and it's simple and it's beautiful, and it didn't erase the problems in the world. But you know what it did do? It reminded me that we still have people that we can love and feel support by and go through life with. And I think, yes, you can touch grass by yourself, but like being in nature, being in community reminds us of this is a really tricky, crazy world, but we're not in it alone, and that we belong to each other. And that's one of the most important things we have in humanity. Okay, I need to speed this up. Point 7, engage in a childhood hobby. I went bike riding the other night. I watched the sunset. It was beautiful. I let my thoughts ramble on. Didn't have a podcast playing, didn't listen to music, wasn't eating a snack, just enjoyed bike riding. Transported me back to being 14 years old and riding my bike through the parking lot of the middle school right next to our house. Loved every second of it. I think those mindless, especially childhood activities, really do something to reconnect you to that joy and also sadness. But it's a beautiful thing. And I think that's one little way we can kind of just like find a pocket of peace. And last tidbit, work hard at something you love. A hobby, a job, an idea, a short story, a recipe, a song, literally whatever. Hard work, doing something you can control and doing it with your whole self. I feel like, again, it's not to escape the problems of the world, but it's to remind us of how strong we are as Imago Dei, image bearers of Christ, that we were not just meant to absorb terrible news, sit around and be sad about it, and then pour out our anger and frustration on everyone around us. That is not what this life is for. I'm going to end with a little quote because it's truly, the best quote we could end on. This is from the great Gandalf from Lord of the Rings, and it feels wildly appropriate for today. It's at the end of the first book, I believe. It says, "I wish it need not have happened in my time," said Frodo. "So do I," said Gandalf. "So do all who live to see such times. But that is not for them to decide. All we have to decide is what to do with the time that is given us." To us. That is given us? Maybe there's a typo in the quote. But that is where I leave you. We cannot fix everything. We have limited capacity and finite control. And in some circumstances, literally no control. But all we have, the only option we have, is to decide what to do with the time that we are given. And whether that is many, many more years for you, or, I hope this isn't true, but many weeks, but we don't know. Like, that's just the truth. We do not know. I hope that we all choose wisely. I hope we decide with wisdom and courage, and that the world is better for it, and that you'll be remembered for something great. So that's all I have to say, guys. Wow. What a juicy podcast. That was a lot. I think I'm going to go pour myself a glass of wine. Thanks for listening. Love you. Do what you can. And that's it. Bye.